What's up, guys? Cliff and Chandra here from Not Gospel Studios. Today, we are talking about what is the system? Is there a cabal that's secretly behind the scenes controlling everything, government, everything, politics, worldwide? Is there not? Are we in the end times? Should we see? Are we going to see the pale horse and rider coming very soon? We don't know. Is it something different? How does church play into it? How does organized religion play into it? We are going to talk about some of this stuff. It's going to be kind of heavy. We'll laugh, we'll cry, we'll break out the popcorn and the Coke. Just kidding. This is not gospel.
I think we have to start at the beginning.
God created the heavens and the earth.
Tom MacDonald. We've been listening to Tom MacDonald so much lately.
Yes.
And we just referenced Brainwashed, and we watched the system and did a reaction to it. And we were going to talk about what each of us think the system actually is, politically, religiously, spiritually.
Yes, so Tom MacDonald's song, The System, it's huge. 5 million views in the first 4 or 5 days.
But even in our own comment section, people have different ideas of what the system is, and they each think they're right.
If you're going to with just what is the system and how it's something different for everybody, shoot. I mean, is that something that changes with time? Is that something with now there's a current system that's different than 200 years ago or 300 years ago or 400 years ago?
I think some people view organized religion as part of the system. Mm-hmm. And I can get on board with a lot of that idea.
And
but
Tom would for sure.
But I also believe that when Jesus came, part of it was getting you out of the system emotionally, at least. Yeah. That no matter what you're constrained with physically and where you're at in the world, you can be removed spiritually and thrive.
Yeah. My take on, okay, well, if we're going to go into religions, and when we're talking about the system, we're talking about the elite powers that sort of govern and make the big decisions for the whole world kind of thing.
And I want to know what you think they are. Because I think I go to conspiracy land more, and I don't know how far you think it goes.
We'll have to piece it apart, one piece at a time. How can religion be part of the system? Because Jesus was so counterculture when he showed up, especially in Christianity. He was so counterculture.
Well, there was no Christianity.
Yeah, and there was no Christianity. But I mean, particularly Christianity is supposed to be kind of counterculture. It was. Where I think it went wrong is my dad tells this story about my brother who we were having a little brush fire in the backyard, and it started getting out of hand. And so my brother started stomping on the fire to put it out. And he had put out, by the time he was done, he had put out the fire right there in his locale where he was stomping. But then Dad looked around, and my brother looked around and saw that he had started a bunch of little fires burning, because all the sparks had fallen everywhere else. And when I think about Jesus and what happened with Christianity, I think that Satan was doing that. He was stomping in the very beginning, trying to stop Christianity. You crucify Jesus, you martyr every single one of the disciples, you tried to stomp it. And as he did that, the same thing happened. It spread throughout all of Rome, spread everywhere.
Yeah, because those men were willing to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. I don't think that the Roman Empire embracing Christianity as the main religion of Rome, the official religion, was a win. Mm-hmm. I think that was Satan changing his tactic.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't stomp it out, so I'm going to embrace it and infect it with my thoughts, and I'm going to fractionalize it. You're going to have denomination here, denomination there, denomination here, and I'm going to try to poison what and influence what of it that I possibly can.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that every single religion and every single church that you go to has got everything wrong. It just means that imperfect people are part of an imperfect system that has been set to govern a perfect faith. I mean, that's why you can have things like you've talked about, like all the pedophilia allegations in the Roman Catholic Church, those kind of things. And you can have poor people in a community that aren't receiving help from the local churches at times, but yet the local church will have $1 million chandelier in the foyer.
Yeah.
Again, that's imperfect people trying to partake in a system that's set in place to govern a perfect faith.
Well, are you basically saying Satan is setting up the systems politically and religiously?
Well, scripturally, I kind of have to believe that because scripturally it says he's the prince of the powers of the air. It's essentially he's given a certain degree of dominion over earth while we're here. It just is a certain degree of influence and dominion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do believe it's working towards God's plan, like his prophecies and his design to eventually reclaim what was his, the whole earth, the whole shebang.
Okay, so I want to know if you kind of believe how I believe, or if... Okay, so my mom seems to believe... Maybe. I'm not sure. Because I'm not sure what you believe. But, okay. I think she believes everything you've just said, and that Satan is in control, but I think she believes it more from a spiritual level, that he's controlling people and the systems from a spirit level. Whereas I believe...
Some of these people, almost like lizard people, some of these people are demonic people.
I believe it's a more also physical organization that is around and alive, and they're living
like
beings.
A cabal.
Yeah.
You're getting Alex Jones on me here.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
He believes in interdimensional alien beings.
If people weren't so crazy, some of the stuff would be harder and harder to believe. Some of the Alex Jones type stuff would be harder to believe. Like Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly talking about drinking each other's blood for ritualistic purposes. That stuff gets media traction. And then you're like, people are crazy. People are doing weird stuff. And then it gets easier and easier to believe that, the head honcho of some secret organization is some demon in human clothing, kind of thing.
Okay, I'm inclined to believe that there's an organization that Satan is the head of, and that there are physical beings that know that this is Satan and are carrying out his plans in the government. I think there are people in our government who's been hanging out physically with Satan, not just spiritually influenced by him.
See, I don't know if I don't think that yet.
So you think possibly Satan is carrying out his plan just by influencing people's hearts?
I think the first physical manifestation, legit physical manifestation of Satan's going to be the Antichrist. Then people are going to be without question, hanging out with the literal devil himself. And they're just going to be orchestrating his will. And I don't know if some of those people in times tribulation, I don't know if some of them are going to figure that out and be like, crap, I'm on the wrong side. You know what I'm saying? Holy smokes. But
I don't believe Satan is the Antichrist.
Well, I believe that he would be... I
think it's his son, basically.
I think he is just like Jesus was. And where Jesus was God with us, that's Satan with us.
Yeah,
is the way I see it.
I agree, yeah.
So, however he works that out. If he's just...
Yeah.
In my head, I've always seen it as people can get spiritually possessed by demons, but the Antichrist would be possessed by the devil. Is the way I always kind of figured it out. That's why he would be so miraculous, I guess is the way to say it.
I hadn't thought of it quite like that.
I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I always viewed it. If you know the clock is ticking, I feel like you'd be as hands-on as you're allowed. And you're not going to put an imp in charge of it or whatever. You're going to be, I'm there, I'm doing it. Yeah.
I felt like what was going on with the Antichrist was more like that.
Are we going to reference some movie or something? Yeah. I knew it. You know that movie?
That Arnold Schwarzenegger movie? Is it called 6 Days or The Sixth Day? Something like that?
Oh, yeah.
That was a good movie.
It's like Damien or whatever it is his son or something like that.
They were trying to bring about the end of the world through impregnating a woman with Satan's seed, basically.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be like that, but I do feel like there is going to be a physical being born on the earth through a woman that's got Satan's seed somehow.
I always kind of figured that he would just be one
regular human that was possessed
at some point.
That's interesting. How organized do you think whatever system it is that's controlling us worldwide is? Do you think the leaders of our countries have an agenda? Or do you think America has an agenda and China has an agenda? Or do you think they're all working together?
I think there is a global agenda. I just don't think they know where it comes from.
But how are they on the same page? No.
They're all on the same page. They have this agenda.
I know there's the Bilderberg memes.
They just don't know that it's also Satan's agenda. That's how I feel about it.
Okay.
I feel like they have a global agenda.
Who's in control of the agenda? Who's the secret one in power that's let's do this?
This is getting a little people are going to think I'm crazy.
Okay.
So hold on a minute.
No, I want to go there.
I think the anomaly in the system is the internet. I think the free exchange of information has corrupted the potential for the driving force, like the whatever's behind the scenes, has slowed it down as much as it has helped it. Because you have so many counter voices to the system and to that cabal, if you want to call it. You have so many voices also dissenting information, like giving information of dissent out there, saying, "Hey, this isn't right. Hey, you can't do this with your kids. Hey, you can't do this, that, and the other." And they've not had the means to control it, particularly in America. They've done it in other countries, and I do think that everybody's kind of waiting for America to fall in line.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, to just. Eventually, they're just going to slap the book on that free speech stuff, and we'll have things well in hand.
Okay, so do you feel like the political and influential leaders get together at like the Bilderberg meetings and stuff?
I have no idea what that is. Bilderberg.
You saying that makes me feel like it's like a mountain of stuff you have to know about. And I'm like, where do I start?
I told you I'm not a conspiracy theorist this whole time.
But that's not a conspiracy theory. It's a real meeting that the powerful leaders of all the countries in the world end up at, as
I don't know.
Do the heads of Google and stuff. Like, you have to look that up later. And it's huge.
They have turkey and dressing, and they all say what they're thankful for.
I don't think that happens. But do you think if there were a meeting that you don't know about, the Bilderberg meetings, do you think there's a leader directing things, or they're coming to a consensus because they're all evil in their hearts?
I would think if there is that kind of thing, I think that there's not one person leader. I think it's a small group, a very small elite group. And then I think there may be representation from each of these other countries. It's like another subset of countries. But I do think it's a very tight group of a few voices that get to pull strings, if that's a thing. If I'm going down that rabbit hole and saying I think the system is controlled, what's the thing that makes the thing that makes a thing? It's a small tight group of voices that decide yes or no on things and kind of influence everything. That's what I would say. Maybe 5 leaders or something like that. If you're gonna force me to go down that hole with you and say that is the system, I feel like the system, and personally, I feel like the system is more everybody in power, wherever they're at, they agree on one thing: we want control.
Yeah.
The more control, the better.
Yeah. Because
they do not want. That's the scariest thing. If you're in charge, the scariest thing is to have like the masses to have agency in how this entire blue-green orb is governed. Right? Like, you don't want the masses to have agency in the laws. You want to pretend they do, but ultimately you want to be able to have that variable controlled. So you can ultimately control the progression of your race and your people and your planet, period. So if I had to guess about the system, I'd really think instead of it being just a small organization like you're saying, I don't necessarily think I agree with that. I think rather UN, whatever you want to call it, all these leaders, they're getting together and they know one thing. They all envy, a lot of them envy places like totalitarian places like China and, Canada right now, like places that can just tell their people what to do. And for the most part, barring the random trucker, protest or whatever, they'll just fall in line. I think those places envy that because it's easy to control. And so that's eventually the goal. And I think the reason that's the goal is because those minds and those people with the money and the power think that that's the only sustainable future. In my head, I think they've tricked themselves into believing that freedom and freedom of choice is the ultimate detriment to human beings in our society.
Yeah.
So they may even think they have the best intentions. But kind of like Thanos and like the Marvel Universe, where you like snapping his fingers and kill half of everything, and everything's better now. I think their goal is sustainability, and for it to look a certain way.
I think that they will use that even among their own peers, like, oh, this is what we have to do to make the world a better place and everything sustainable for the longest period of time. I think they'll use that to get the control. Is the government the system to you? Are governments worldwide what you consider the system?
I think the government leaders worldwide are the system. I don't think there is a cabal that's put these governments in place that is just, you run your country, you run your country, we're in charge.
Like, I feel like things have been planned and manipulated for hundreds and thousands of years and steered different ways politically and stuff from one agenda, from one group. And you just think it's
well,
like
that's what I'm saying. You think it's
individual.
more like Illuminati, Freemasons, kind of like...
Like, if I had to put a name to it, I guess I could call it Illuminati, but because I think that's the general term people use, but I don't know.
And see, my thought is, I feel like the dispersal of human beings has been so dramatic, too dramatic, to make that a reality. Like, even if it was the Roman Empire at one point, or even if it's the Mongolian Empire at one point, where they had the power, and that's 1,000 years ago or whatever it is. Like, that's a long time ago. Their influence didn't stretch to this place and that place and that place and that place.
Yeah.
So
well, they tried. Yeah.
They tried, but that's what I'm saying is, like, I don't see any one small group of leaders surviving the fall of the Roman Empire, surviving the fall of the Mongolian Empire to transition to this or that, the other. I feel like now you've got a new ruling power and whatever. So I think to me, it makes more sense to assume that these ruling powers kind of got together, communally, worked together at some point. If it was 100 years ago, if it was 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, whenever it was, I feel like that makes a little bit more sense, that they kind of started working together in pockets. The Great Replacement Theory now is getting a lot of traction. And if you go on Wikipedia, they call the Great Replacement Theory this white nationalist, right-wing extremist, white supremacy theory that is designed to radicalize people and to cause them to do acts of hate and crime and violence against minorities. The thing is, though, like, if you watch, we'll show this clip here. It's getting traction on national news coverage, but in the national news coverage and all the, like, more liberal media, it's just being painted with one brush. This is white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy.
What's the danger of letting these lies go unchallenged?
The danger is this, that a white supremacist conspiracy theory that was the intellectual ammunition of the KKK and the Nazis has now become mainstream. 50% of Republican voters believe in the Great Replacement Theory, which is a white supremacist conspiracy theory, and a third of Americans do. So although these individuals like Tucker Carlson and Lee Stefanik and other Republicans are not responsible for literally handing the gun to radicalized individuals, they are part of the same ideological infrastructure. They provide the ideological bullets, and they mainstream what was once a fringe white supremacist talking point. This has incited and radicalized individuals to commit hate and terror against vulnerable communities both here and abroad. They attack Jews, blacks, Hispanics, Muslims. We're all quote-unquote invaders seen as replacing white folks. It is the #1 domestic terror threat in America, white supremacist terrorism. And literally the talking points and the ideology of these terrorists is echoed nightly on Fox News.
Okay, first off, he put Jewish people in there with more traditionally brown people, like darker brown people.
Yeah.
And most white people think of Jewish people as just other white people, as far as I can tell. I might be wrong.
Well,
I know there are some people who are like, oh, down with the Zionists.
The other thing
stuff,
is, the guy in Buffalo, the shooter in Buffalo, in his manifesto, I saw pieces of it. I'm pretty sure it was the shooter in Buffalo. He said before they label him as a nationalist, racist, right winger, he had answered these own questions. Like, I'm just as much a socialist as I am a capitalist. I'm just as much like he's essentially like a libertarian type person. So that is actually packaging a false narrative, saying that he was just a white supremacist extremist.
He's painting all Republicans who would believe that this is happening as, oh, we want to murder brown people because we're racist.
Yeah, and that's not the
case.
They
have nothing to do with each other.
Right. You don't have to be a racist to want immigrants to come here legally.
Yeah.
There's nothing racist about that. You don't have to be a racist to want the vote to be limited to American citizens.
Yeah.
There's nothing racist about that. If you're a legal American citizen, that should be your ticket to having say in how this country is governed, period. Like, there's nothing racist about that. But the interesting thing to me is, if you notice the wording, it's like they're literally trying to program people. Every time he mentioned the Great Replacement Theory, it immediately, even as fast as it could, he'd be like, which is white supremacist theory, blah, blah, blah. Which is the white supremacist, blah, blah, blah. Like, every time.
And then equates it all to Tucker Carlson feeding it to us.
Tucker Carlson, white supremacist, blah, blah, blah. Tucker Carlson, like, it's like programming.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's so It's like he literally had to say it, or it's like he had a quota. If you don't say white supremacy 14 times, you're kicked off the show. Like, it's, something crazy.
That makes me twice as suspicious, because they're like, oh, if you notice this happening, you're not allowed to say anything about it or you're racist. Yeah. They're pre-programming everybody.
What is the funny thing is, when people on the right are talking about great replacement theory, they're not talking about white supremacy and, we're afraid for our whiteness or whatever. They're literally talking about a sort of hostile takeover of government.
Yeah.
That
they're using...
the reason we have a porous open border is to manipulate the vote and to rush in a bunch of illegal immigrants and to make it where European immigrants from second, third generation, whatever you are no longer the majority. Well, and they call it a radical theory with no credibility that has been disproven over and over and over, right?
I don't even know if it's true, but I would lean towards the side that they are using.
But the reason why to me that's funny is because then we'll watch this clip of Joe Biden, 2017.
So there's a second thing in that black box: an unrelenting stream of immigration, non-stop. Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America, from then and on, will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing.
Like, to me, it matters neither here nor there what color the people are. I think they're focused on it more than our side would.
Yeah, it doesn't matter the color. We just want them to be legal immigrants.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is how can you say, at one point, well, the great replacement theory is that disproven, non-credible theory or a white supremacist crazy loony bin theory, when Joe Biden in 2017 is saying by 2017 or whatever, we're going to have this flood of immigration, just this stream, this wide open flood of immigration, and Caucasian people of European descent are absolutely going to be the minority. It's like he's saying that's the goal. That's the good thing. That's the goal. And if that's what America's going to be, that's fine if it happens legally.
Yeah, and just naturally through marriage and stuff. Yeah.
Here's the interesting thing to me is who I think should really be just their gourd be tweaked about this? Indigenous people. Yeah. Native Americans. We come in, steal their land because we have advanced weaponry, right? We come in, we steal their land, and then we shove them on.
We bought the land in a lot of cases.
But then we shove them onto reservations. The buying was oftentimes a settlement because it's like, we can come in and just shoot you guys up, settle. And so they get these these swaths of land in Montana and various places that are not super habitable. They got the rawest deal in the world, like a very raw deal in this end. Instead of trying to go back to Native Americans and indigenous people here and say, hey, even though whether you agree with this or not, it's like, hey, we messed up. Let's rearrange and restructure the deal to make things better for us as America. Instead, it's like, no, we're still not going to worry about you. And as a matter of fact, in pursuit of making white Americans the minority, we're just going to flood the border, open the border with a bunch of other people and just allow them to come in totally illegally. And they're also going to take advantage of the land that your ancestors used to have. It's just, it seems so crap for them.
So are you saying if there was a system that is our government,
yes,
it's using people coming over our borders illegally to sway votes a certain way so that America looks how they want it to look and is controlled how they want it to be controlled? Well,
and if you get at the deeper end of the pool is that it's using this to make people think that and make people mad at each other. Mm-hmm. See, so if you look at it, the system, and it's a system, a left end system. It's not necessarily a Democrat system, but it's a left-leaning system. A global left is like socialist, totalitarian. It leads to that stuff. Socialism, communism. That's like global left.
Yeah.
They tried it in the 20th century. They tried communism. It was the bloodiest 100 years in history. 160 million people dead. Tried it. And although China's a success story to one degree or another, they still don't have religious freedom, blah, blah, blah. You can go through the list of things they don't have. They're still successful. And they're still a superpower. But if you had to build that on the back of 60 million dead people, it's like, I don't think that's good.
Yeah.
You know? So for me, I would think that either there's a system with, like you said, the smaller people in play, the smaller group who is pulling the strings left versus right, and so that we will fight, kind of like Tom MacDonald said each other, so we will be at each other's throats and never just assess the system at whole.
I think that's how it is.
Or there is a system that's like, I'm going to use this to move things towards a political left, what we have seen in the 20th century, which is like Mao and Stalin, and just sort of make totalitarianism a global thing.
Okay, like just from my point of view, I think a lot of Christians are starting to feel this way also. It would be that whatever the system is, it has an agenda, and it's to destroy families, put more people in poverty so that they can be controlled by government, and so that we're going to be moving towards a one world government.
Well, religiously, what do you think the system is doing? How is it impacting religion? What would you think?
I think it's made by the same one, Satan, basically. A lot of organized religion is just used to control people, I think.
In specifics,
Yeah.
I think the system right now is flooding religion, has been fractionalizing religion from the start with one goal, to get people to a point where we don't even know what we believe anymore. Tell us what to believe. And then that can unite government and religion.
Yeah.
Because right now,
which happens in the one world government in the Bible.
Right.
Yeah.
They can unite religion and the government to where we don't care. We don't know what to believe. We're completely confused. These people are praying to God the Mother. These people are praying to Mother Earth. These people aren't praying to anybody. These people are praying to themselves. These people are praying to Jesus. We don't know what to believe. Tell us what to believe. And then the government, who has made everything else work, I did air quotes for those people on the podcast, steps in and says, here's what we believe. You know, this is what
And
will
then
work.
they have miracles to prove it. They have a man who's united several religions all together.
We just went straight to Revelation very quickly.
I know, several countries all get put together.
Why didn't you guys just say this was a Revelation Bible study?
Well, I feel like that's the way things are headed for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And are we in the end times now? I think probably yes. But if we're not, I think 200, 400 years from now, it'll look similar, all heading towards one place.
I think it does feel like we're in those times of seeing some prophecies fulfilled. You know, the times when Jesus says in the last days they will not endure sound doctrine, but they'll turn to fables.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes in strange places and all these things that are kind of happening. And then for the really, really like Revelation people, didn't we just have a blood moon like last week? A blood moon and an eclipse? Like,
Yep. I mean, it's looking sketchy. I wouldn't go out on a limb and be like, this is for sure what's happening. The tribulation started last week. I wouldn't necessarily do that.
we can talk about, not this today, but we can talk about that meteor that's supposed to come really, really close to the Earth in 2029. Anyways.
Well, did we explain what we think the system is? I think we know what I think the system is.
Oh.
Illuminati.
Right. Chandra thinks the system for sure like is the Illuminati.
I think it's organized by Satan.
Chandra
it's a physical thing.
Is inclined to believe the system is a organized cabal of some sort.
Yeah.
And worldwide. I tend to lean more on Satan is behind the scenes manipulating things all to one goal and using the greed of people to manipulate it in similar ways. Like he used Stalin's greed to manipulate it to control that whole region, you know, and then used Hitler's greed and twisted ideologies to do what he did, and used Mao's ideologies, and then doing the same thing. I think he works through leaders. So do I think there's...
I just feel like that Satan keep trying the same thing in different eras to bring about his purpose, but only God knows when it's going to be the ultimate time.
I would wager that there is some behind the scenes individual here, and we probably know their name. I'll just like there's so many names.
You think the Antichrist is already hanging out?
No. I'm just saying like there are infamous names. Like George Soros is an infamous name, you know, and all these infamous names. Warren Buffett is an infamous name in real estate and like investments, right? Like so these infamous names. I think there's an infamous name that we probably know in America that is that type of person that is pushing things, helping,
Yeah.
sort
and
of
he goes to the Bilderberg meetings.
influencing things towards a certain way.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that goal, I think they believe that goal is, I don't know that they're like, we're doing this for Church of Satan or for Satan, you know what I'm saying? I think it's more, I do believe it has to do with the only way to sustain this and the only way to do this is we're going to get the control of the masses.
Yeah.
And 200 years ago, we fought for freedom, what we thought was freedom, and that's great, but not doing that ever again. Slowly but surely, we're going to get America, the last frontier, let's say, and we're going to get those freedoms stripped back down to where everybody's in line. And I think they believe the presumption is the goal is sustainability, but I think that is the system that Satan would use.
Yes.
To eventually point everything towards tell us what to believe, tell us what to do, tell us what to wear, tell us what to think, tell me what my job is, tell me how many kids I can have. The end.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us on this podcast. This is an interesting deal. Let us know what you think about this stuff. A lot to unpack when you start talking about like world leaders and Illuminati and like all this like Revelation end times type stuff. Believers out there, let us know what you think. Non-believers, let us know what you think. Keep supporting independent quality content. Thank you again for all the likes, shares, subs, and comments. So don't forget to subscribe. And as always, keep being awesome because that's how God made you.